How old were you when you first played Ocarina of Time? I had just turned 14. I got it for Christmas 1998. The hype for this game was absolutely enormous. Nintendo's marketing was very effective indeed in those days, and I for one was tremendously excited about it. The ad is extremely effective. There were magazine features, there were print adverts. To me as a little kid, it seemed like some ageless, weightless relic was just about to land on the shelves of my local Virgin megastore. I seem to remember it selling out in a number of places too, in the UK at least. My dear old mum managed to secure one for me. Playing it on the CRT in my little bedroom on Christmas morning was a transportative experience. It was so densely textured and fantastically atmospheric. This was still in the relatively early days of real-time 3D, of course, and the innovative and very effective control system felt weird to me, but also rich with possibilities. The game also had a sense of arcane fairy tale weight and heft to it that was new to me and most other gamers too, I would hazard a guess. That quality has arguably never quite been equalled, even by other games in the series. I'd love to tell you that I was utterly swept away by the game and played through the whole thing in the space of a week, but no. I have to confess that I did a few dungeons and then kind of wussed out on it, to be honest. In Lord Jabu Jabu's belly somewhere, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the arse to this day, in fairness. I returned to it about 2 years later, for reasons I can't recall now, to be honest, and was then completely swept away by it. When I started playing the game, I was a mostly integrated little kid bathing in the glow of the Christmas tree and my parents' unshakable love and protection, and when I finished it, I was an imploded lower middle class mama's boy, studying for my A-levels, in a manner of speaking, messing around with drugs and feeling completely alienated, confused and weirdly guilty. My childhood had kind of disintegrated, my powers seemed to have vanished. I'd lost my way and I hadn't yet figured out that I would never really pick up that trail again. The themes of Ocarina of Time play into all this stuff, of course. Coming of age, loss of innocence, memory and nostalgia, darkness, nightmares, the passing of time. I've recently started playing the game with my 6-year-old daughter, and we're both completely absorbed by it, despite its fairly archaic looks. The magic has not dimmed one bit, and if anything, it's even more compelling than I remember. Zelda 64, as it was known for several years up until not long before it was released, if I remember correctly, suffered delay after delay, but this only made the anticipation grow. I used to see a few fuzzy screen grabs in Edge magazine every couple of months, followed by news of another delay, but it looked amazing. Nintendo had promised a CG-like graphical presentation for its N64 games. It fell short of this, of course, but Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, at least, did look beautiful. It might seem a little quaint now, but the game was actually quite an intimidating proposition upon release. Stepping into the Deku Tree's dark, dusty, womb-like environment was not for the faint-hearted. We were not used to such large, fully 3D environments in those days, and a method of navigating them successfully had not yet been fully codified. A lot of games had tried by this point. There were many failures and a handful of successes, such as Tomb Raider or Mario 64. So yeah, you could shoot guns at things and you could jump on people's heads, but how would swordplay work in real-time 3D? That was quite the challenge. The lock-on system featured in Zelda 64 was considered a stroke of genius upon its release. It was all very new, and yeah, it was pretty formidable. Stepping out into Queen Goma's dank, dark cavern here will stay with me for the rest of my days, I think. There are a million little things to love about this game. All the seemingly minor animations, like Link's little hesitation here as he leaves Saria and his childhood home behind. The cinematic sequences are rendered in real time. Now, back in the mid-90s, everyone was crazy about the unlimited, inverted commas, capacity of the compact disc format. The vast majority of games used full-motion video, sometimes pre-rendered, sometimes live-action, when they wanted to show you a cutscene. Then they would switch to real-time 3D. In 1998, the original Half-Life and Metal Gear Solid and Ocarina of Time, and there's probably some more too, broke with this rule. I remember Half-Life being praised particularly in this regard because not only were the cutscenes in real time, but they weren't even cutscenes really. You just saw stuff happen around you while you remained in control of the action. But yeah, previous to this, FMV was de rigueur really. FMV sequences were in fact a very strong selling point for the likes of Final Fantasy VII. FMV of any great length, of course, wasn't possible anyway on an N64 because it used relatively low-capacity cartridges rather than CDs, and earlier consoles had such limited 3D capabilities that FMVs just looked vastly better. But yeah, Ocarina's approach to cinematic sequences felt more cohesive, and it mostly removed that disconnect between cutscene and gameplay, and they are absolutely beautifully directed. The animation is gorgeous. To this day, Ocarina of Time has some of my favourite cutscenes of all time. Then of course there were moments like this that were uncanny, unsettling and absolutely magical. A million little idiosyncratic touches like the owl who swivels his head round and you can't tell which way is the right way up. And of course all the absolute nutballs who inhabit this intoxicating pastoral world. The running man, for example, who legs it around Hyrule Field continuously, and here you can sell a bunny mask to allow him to break his own record time a bit later in the game. The cute and rather unsettling characters called Skull Kids, who you come across in the Lost Woods, conjure up an ambiguous feeling of pity and suspicion. Like some troubled kid at school, you feel sorry for them and you want to help them, but you also have a nagging sense that they might get you into trouble somehow if you get involved with them. The day-night cycles were amazing also, the subtle gradient between night and day. Look at that. Beautiful. It had been done before, but not often and not nearly as effectively. I'm sure some folks won't be aware that this was actually very novel indeed at the time, and it was extremely effective. Famously, the first visit to the sprawling Hyrule Field was a bit of a revelation to many. And then there's the rendering itself. I've been playing the recent recompilation of this game on my PC with my daughter, with a real N64 pad of course. I would highly recommend using the proper controller, by the way. Yeah, this recomp is a fantastic way to play the game, it absolutely is. But I did get my old N64 out shortly before writing this, and had a quick run around on the original game, and a couple of things did strike me. Now look, the PC recompilation in 4K or whatever, particularly with a nice texture pack, is better visually by really every conceivable metric. Ask my daughter which one she'd rather play, and she'd pick this one every time, I'm sure. But there is something about this original version. Run the original game's textures in 4K and you will see that they are beyond low resolution, they're almost non-existent at times. Combine them with the original game's 240p resolution, however, and they seem perfectly adequate. The extremely low polygon nature of the 3D models are drawn into even sharper relief when rendered in a high resolution. The original release is massively lower res, of course, and it also has the heavy and numerous visual filters running on it, which anti-alias, blur, and also leave a film grain light texture over the image. It's really quite a different looking game, actually. The N64 version looks worse, but it's also more cohesive, it's more consistent, it's more effective in some ways because of that indistinctness. It has more layers of texture, and it renders the world even more abstract, almost impressionistic. It contributes to that through-the-looking-glass sensation you get while playing this wonderful game. There's something about this morass of visual noise that affects the colour, it affects the light. The original also runs in something like 24 frames per second, which contributes to that film-like quality. As with 24 frames per second movies, there's something about moving a little further away from reality that makes it feel more real, paradoxically. It's more pure, it's more abstract. We don't have two levels of reality clashing together in quite the same way. We only have the idea, the impression, the essence. You have to exert more effort to decode this strange new world, and thus you're a little more engaged with it. Anyway, I'm rambling. I made my way through the early dungeons and then got to Lord Jabu Jabu's belly. I struggled with this for a bit and then I gave up. It collected dust in the corner of my room, no doubt. I eventually replaced my N64 with a Dreamcast console in that time and never really looked back. The N64 felt like old hat to me really at that time. For reasons I can't really recall right now, I did decide to pick it back up at the tail end of 2000. It's been said by some that Link is a liminal character. He's a low-status character growing up tucked away in the Kokiri forest. He's also a bit of an outcast even here, being the only kid in the forest who doesn't have a fairy. So yeah, the story has a bit of a picaresque kind of quality to it. He finds out later that he's actually a Hylian highborn boy, but he hasn't grown up there. He doesn't belong in that world either. So there's a kind of confusion there. He doesn't really fit in anywhere. This game is about being a child, it's about being a young adult, it's also about being an outsider. That certainly chimes with me, especially at that particular time in my life. As I said earlier, for no particularly compelling reason, I was confused, disoriented, and frightened at this time. I'd moved on to what we in the UK call sixth form college. It's where you go from ages 16 to 18. The one I went to was quite a stuffy, haughty, rather pompous one that boasted about being in existence since 1557 and had loads of Victorian red brick buildings. Its reputation drew in lots of thoroughly middle-class public school kids from affluent commuter towns around the northwest of England. Quite a large proportion of them went off to Oxford or Cambridge after they'd finished. My family were reasonably well-to-do, don't get me wrong, but I was certainly not one of these folks. I hadn't liked my comprehensive school either, to be fair, but yeah, I most certainly didn't like it here. I had no idea what I was doing there. I had no idea what I wanted to do with myself, and I felt no connection with anyone, really. I started dabbling with weed and ecstasy with some of my mates from my old comprehensive school, and just sort of gradually disintegrated, really. Oh, those were the days. Not. We had some laughs, of course, but my overriding sensation in those days was one of dread, confusion, and guilt. So yeah, drugs messed me up a bit really, although it was more of a symptom or exacerbation than a real cause, I would say. I also listened to a lot of Pixies, Queens of the Stone Age, Aphex Twin, the Beatles, and stuff like that, and I read a lot of Mojo magazine via my old man. I was really taken one month by an article in there about the great lost Beach Boys album, Smile. And just to make myself that little extra bit demented, I listened to a lot of that while playing this game. I smoked a lot of puff and ate a lot of peanut butter on toast too, of course. In my mind, Smile and Ocarina of Time are inextricably linked. Smile, described by the great Brian Wilson as a teenage symphony to God, a highly abstract record filled with childlike sweetness, whimsy, aching melancholy, doo-wop, desolation, mysticism, dippy little joke songs, and a yearning for, I don't know, salvation, I guess, something like that. There is a religious element to this record, I think. The opening track is called Our Prayer. After all, By most accounts, Brian Wilson had some sort of mental breakdown while making it. It was never finished, it was never released. At the time, at least. Yeah, I see parallels with this album and this game. The melodies of Ocarina and those of the Smile sessions are interconnected in my mind. They run into one another. To me, there's a sense of confused, slightly demented adolescence to both. We go from sweetly innocent pastoral to carnivalesque, from a mad little ditty about vegetables to the deeply menacing to the deeply solemn. Let's see if we can cheat the algorithm a bit, eh? I cheated a little bit there because one of those was actually from Pet Sounds, but you get the idea. Brian Wilson's melodies on Smile will stay in my head as long as I live, I think, and Koji Kondo's work on Ocarina of Time will too. When writing the songs to be performed by the player on the Ocarina, the composer Koji Kondo was restricted by the N64's 5 face buttons. Somehow he was able to make joyful yet melancholy melodies that are firmly lodged in my brain, and judging by the sounds I often hear coming out of her Amazon Echo Dot recently, they seem to have lodged themselves in my daughter's mind also. Musician and lyricist Van Dyke Parks, who worked closely with Brian Wilson on the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds and Smile albums, said, "You don't know whether to laugh or cry when you hear that stuff, and I think that's what great art can do, and that makes it precious." I'd suggest that Koji Kondo's music walks a similar line too. Yeah, the music in this game takes me right back to my adolescence. That's where I was when I first played this game. I'm not there anymore. I have a wife, a job, a house, and a little girl. But picking this game up again recently and playing through it with my little one has reminded me. It's also made me very aware of the passing of time and of the generations. It's also given me the delight of seeing my child experience the magic of this wonderful game anew, and seeing that it really hasn't lost its sparkle in the intervening years. I'm seeing the game from a slightly different perspective now, and it's been really quite illuminating, and loads of fun too, of course. The creator of the Legend of Zelda series, Shigeru Miyamoto, has been quoted as saying, "Games are a trigger for adults to again become primitive, primal, as a way of thinking and remembering. An adult is a child who has more ethics and morals. That's all. I'm not creating a game, I am in the game. The game is not for children, it is for me. It is for an adult who still has the character of a child." The game is not for children. Yeah, well, in fairness, who says this kind of thing in a kid's game? The flow of time is always cruel. Its speeds seem different for each person, but no one can change it. A thing that doesn't change with time is a memory of younger days. A childish mind will turn to noble ambition. The clear water's surface reflects growth. Alright, maybe it's not fully intended for children, but that being said, Hyrule is a happy place for a little boy. As Little Link, we see blue skies overhead, distant lands on the horizon, we see cool water, we see the sun rise and set. It's pastoral, it has a sense of harmony and order. It's like a giant playground filled with seemingly limitless possibilities. That all takes a big turn, of course, when we become an adult, when Ganondorf tricks us into seizing absolute power, and when we next step foot into Hyrule Castle Town, we see a deeply corrupt, even post-apocalyptic scene. I'll assume rightly or wrongly that a lot of other people's experience of adolescence are at least somewhat similar to mine. I could be entirely wrong, of course. I was filled with a sense of fear, a realization that my parents are actually vulnerable people, just like me, that they make mistakes, just like me, and that they have a limited ability to protect me from the adult world. I learned that the world was quite a corrupt and often cruel place, and that I was soon going to have to become a part of it. It wasn't an overnight thing, it crept in bit by bit, and if you're anything like me, it just kept on getting worse, for a few years at least. And so, like Link, you find yourself a young adult. More powerful, yes, but also troubled, burdened. In the game, you must flit back and forth between your child and adult states at times to complete your quest. When you shift through time and have to see Hyrule Castle Town turn from a happy, bustling, sunny marketplace into a zombie thing-infested wasteland, you are reminded of the passing of time and the loss of childhood and the pastoral. The great sages you recruit, in a sense, to help destroy the evil Ganondorf are mostly all childhood friends. Through our engagement with the past, through our life experience, through the skills we've learned and the friends we've met along the way, and time travel of course, our memory and our nostalgia even, we are able to overcome evil, to purify the land and return peace. For a time, at least. Ocarina is a lot of things to a lot of people, and everyone will find something to enjoy in it. It's a ripping little yarn, with an enchanting world to interact with, in the spirit of something like The Hobbit, say. No, not the movies. The book, I mean. But if you want to, you can see more in there. It has strong, genuine subtext. For me, it's up there with proper hero's journey stuff, literary stuff. Alice in Wonderland, Aladdin, and The Hobbit, of course. Miyamoto-san and the other developers took this thing seriously, and I don't mean serious as in gritty and violent with swearing and masses of boring, pointless lore. No, they took it all far more seriously than that. They crafted something genuinely quite profound and also incredibly entertaining. There's something about presenting very solemn themes in a childlike, abstract manner that's just far more effective than a gritty, violent, on-the-nose presentation. It's a kind of caricature, I guess, a kind of impressionism. These profound themes are expressed in an oblique way. The themes and ideas can play in our minds any way they wish, uncontaminated and unrestricted by any mere facsimile of reality. The Ocarina of Time features a lot of Shinto and Buddhist elements, and it also has a lot of Christian sacred architecture and imagery, but ultimately it is a Japanese game, and this story at its root is more Taoist than Christian to me. I don't want to turn this into an academic thing because I'm not an academic, but I'll try and whiz over it quickly. In Japan's Shinto religion, the universe began as a formless, silent chaos, a kind of oily mire. From this chaos, 3 solitary, formless kami appeared, followed by more, eventually forming heaven and earth. Taoism focuses on living in harmony with the natural, impersonal way, inverted commas, or Tao, through balance, yin-yang, spontaneity and simplicity, emphasizing the present and mind-body integration. This is contrasted with Christianity, which centers on a personal, transcendent God, salvation through Jesus Christ, a distinct spiritual afterlife, and moral absolutes defined by divine law, with key differences in concepts of God, sin, and salvation. That Google, eh? Marvelous what they can do nowadays. I don't know if Brian Wilson was a Christian as such. He was raised Presbyterian, according to Wikipedia. In 1966, Brian Wilson told interviewers that, "I believe in God, in one God, some higher being who's better than we are. But I'm not formally religious. I simply believe in the power of the Spirit and in the manifestation of this in the goodness of people." He also described his album as a teenage symphony to God. There is a religious Christian dimension to this record, I think. I hear a kind of yearning for peace, mercy, salvation, redemption, whatever you want to call it. It sounds to me like a young man struggling, treading water, searching high and low for something to cling to, and not really managing to find it. I didn't suffer the childhood trauma that Brian Wilson reportedly did, thank God, and needless to say, I don't share any of his musical gifts. I mean, I can play the triangle on a good day and about 6 chords on a guitar, but I certainly have experienced anxiety and depression, and I found adolescence and young adulthood difficult. Well, I found life difficult, really. I think most of us probably do. And yeah, I think most of us can relate in some way to Brian's travails. As a youngster, I was always looking for a way back home, a way back to the world I used to know, a way to feel like myself again, a way to avoid becoming a part of the cruel, corrupt world I saw around me. There wasn't any way back, of course, and everything ahead looked pretty bad too, to be honest. I found that the only thing to do really was just accept the reality I found myself in and walk on. Take a little something to eat, a little something to drink, avoid the worst of it and find whatever peace I could along the way. In time, little green shoots appeared, and here I am playing this wonderful game with my kid. I'm rambling hugely. Hyrule doesn't find salvation as such at the end of Ocarina of Time. It doesn't reach an end point. No. This video game filled with little fairy kids with goofy faces, men in bunny masks running about in a field all day, and great big fish kings with tiny little legs is far too grown up for that. Evil isn't entirely vanquished, it's merely sealed away. That's the best we can do right now. One day, inevitably, he will return. But that's okay, the world is peaceful. For now, we do what we can. We stay vigilant, we enjoy whatever peace we can create for ourselves, and we walk on. The world of The Legend of Zelda is not one of salvation, redemption, and firm endpoints. It's one of unending cycles of temporary peace. We see that play out time and time again throughout the series. Age-old problems recur, and age-old forces rise to meet them. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. There is no ultimate triumph, no clear endpoint, but there is a victory. Ocarina of Time has an ostensibly happy ending, of course. Our characters dance about and all is well with the world, but there's also an oblique sense of loss. Link has never really known his parents, and at the end of the game, he has to say goodbye to the closest thing he has to a guardian, Navi the fairy. Link looks like a kid. Well, he is a kid, but he now carries the weight of experience, and he must go on alone. He's an adult and a child. Link's memories and nostalgia become his bridge to the pastoral and his sense of childhood, as it does for all of us. As the Tao Te Ching says, return to the state of the infant. Like Brian Wilson or possibly Van Dyke Parks said, child is the father of the man.